Let's check out the second interview that I snagged off. This is with Windows Central, which again kind of addresses a couple of things regarding Mythic Plus in the similar fashion. So this is like quoting from Ion Hazzikostas from that interview. On Mythic Plus, I think that this season was a season of experiments. We changed the way affixes work, the way progression is structured, and we have been iterating based on feedback. I don't know about that. They did change the affixes a lot.
To their credit, just before we go after this, they did. They went through the affixes twice, a whole bunch.
Yeah, because you remember that first iteration of holy
thorns,
moly, yes.
When warlocks were killing themselves because they had dots. And they definitely listened to some of the changes to tanks and healers. Not all, which is weird because it's not consistent across the board. Yeah. Some of them are still stubbornly stuck to.
Yeah, exactly. A big focus for the team right now is to smooth out some particular pain points in specific dungeons, while also looking at class balance. This is the first time he mentions class balance in regards to Mythic Plus. It's interesting because, you know, why wouldn't you get a priest in a Mythic Plus? Because
why would you get a
useless? Yeah, so it's a lot of that. Now, moving forward, we also don't feel like we have a proper on-ramp into the system. For a lot of players hitting level 8 delves, you're getting very powerful rewards at that point. When you look across from there to Mythic Plus, it can feel there's no point doing anything below a Mythic Plus 7, and 7 up is actually quite hard. Again, he's referring to the people that are, you know, finishing up with the delves tier 8 and actually wanting to get in, right? If you're someone without experience of dungeons to begin with, plus 7 is not the best point of entry. And it certainly wasn't designed to be a point of entry, so we think some players are hitting a cliff wall. This one, I feel, goes a lot more in depth with the explanation, because I feel it's much more clear now.
Yeah.
So we see a lot of people bouncing off that would have previously had a home in early Mythic Plus tiers. So for Season 2, that's one of the big things we're going to address there. It just wasn't something we could change in the middle of Season 1.
That's fair.
The context he put here, so like, why didn't you do these changes already? Well, they did have a lot of changes and experiments to Season 1, and they really didn't want to do it. I understand where he's coming from.
It was a lot. Like, they clearly didn't get the tuning right before the season started anyway, and we had a lot of issues with the release of the season. So adding more on their plate, I can definitely feel like this wasn't going to be a reality. What I'm happy to hear is that not only are they aware, because I think they're aware of way more things that they're letting on, there are way more things that they're saying publicly. Yeah. I don't think they're that clueless. We know for sure that sometimes some devs watch our content, and that probably just means that they watch a lot of content from a lot of content creators. They're pretty in tune with the community. They just probably pick and choose exactly on what feedback to go on, what they think has a higher priority and what does not. What is interesting to see that they're definitely aware of this disconnected gap between...
Exactly, because he points it out, right? You have a lot of people that came back for War Within, they did delves, they pushed it to 8, and then as an entry point to Mythic Plus, plus 7 was awaiting them, like balancing rewards, right?
Yeah.
And as he mentioned it, plus 7 is not an entry point.
That's not what you want. You don't want to do a plus 7 and here's like, oh guys, this is my first dungeon. So
yeah, exactly. Oh man, that's gonna cause some toxicity and drama and all of that. And I linked this to our like vibes and feelings like at the beginning of the season, where we had a lot of people leaving and a lot of people not communicating. And I feel, I'm not saying this is the cause, but I think part of it was this. A lot of people trying out Mythic Plus for the very first time and getting so anxious and so overwhelmed that was just, I don't want to deal with this. See ya.
We do know for sure that at the beginning of the season, it was like a record break in terms of how many keys were being done. At least from
it was like
database.
Like we did one wrap up.
We used to find groups in like 30 seconds.
Instant. More often than in the past, we found tanks and healers.
Yeah.
But regardless, I think like at some point, maybe a month after Season 1 launch, something like that, we did that data pooling from Warcraft logs and compared it to like previous expansions, where we saw the number of logs being...
I can tell you right now,
it was like almost double.
Over 950,000 Restoration Shaman parses, way more than any other DPS spec. It was the first time that I saw a healer.
In total comparison, like compared to like other expansions, this was like huge. So a lot of people jumped in Mythic Plus.
Yeah, for Season 3 in Dragonflight, Reds got 1 million parses about a month or a month and a half into Season 3, and that was like past middle of point of the expansion, and it never really grew past that. And every other season had about 300 to 400, maybe 500,000 max parses for one. And I'm talking about just the one spec. Obviously, it trickles down for the rest of the specs, but just to kind of paint a picture. So it was, you could arguably say it was at least double the amount of keys that we were doing in our best past season this. So it's clear that we had a lot of people playing. It's clear that a lot of people enjoyed the content enough to actually do it, and something happened in the meantime. They probably hit that either +7s or +8s, or maybe +7s, like, okay, this is
that's
no
what he
longer
says.
for me.
There's a huge drop off.
Yeah.
Like at that point, like once people got to that and started dealing with everything that's happening within the Mythic +7 and moving forward, there was a huge drop off. And I didn't look at the logs for the last, I don't know, couple of weeks, but I'm pretty sure they're not lower, a lot lower than what we saw when we did that show and looked at those numbers. Because it has to be. You feel it in looking for group. You feel it in like the presence of players. And, you know, you see people like even on the stream or on video saying like they're done. That's it. You know, it's exhausting. And I hate that it has to come to this. And I feel this is the syndrome of them over complicating all of these dungeons, because you get burned out. As much as we love doing dungeons, and we went through this on almost all seasons, at some point we're just so fed up with it.
Sure. Like, so I don't want to sound like a sim, but I think Asmongold just says it the best. It's over-designed. The game is over-designed. It's just way too much of everything, and it bleeds into a lot of other stuff. And it's not bad to have like a complex video game. We have those. We have probably the best example is Path of Exile. Look at that skill tree. Look how much stuff there is there, right? People still play the shit out of it. Yeah. But, you know, it depends on how it's implemented, and it's clear that every time WoW has been super popular, I don't want to say it was when it was easy, but it was when the barrier of entry was very low. Even in patch 8.3 in BFA, when we probably arguably had the best time playing, it was because the corruptions was such a wild influx of player power that you didn't really have to have skill for. Debatable if that was good or not. That lowered the barrier of entry for people, because you could be shit at your spec. If you got a rank 3 Twilight Devastation, you were melting packs. We probably don't want to have that, right? But it's a clear indication that happened again in the season 3 of Dragonflight, where they lowered the barrier of entry by making it the easiest season ever to gear up.
That was due to gear up, and also due to the dungeon rotations as well. Yeah, it was like they were like
whatever
easier, shorter dungeon. It was a conglomerate of factors that made that season so popular.
Yeah, but overall,
but it confirms basically it reconfirms the fact that you don't need to like overcomplicate things. You don't need to like make this game for the like ultra NASA scientists. Everybody can have fun at the, like, starting from the lower levels to the utmost highest levels. If they're gonna go for quote unquote easier dungeons, more streamlined, I would say, less cast mechanics, things to be aware of, and more of the gameplay, they're still gonna have their MDIs. They're still gonna have the like 0.1 percenters.
People are gonna creative,
but it's always gonna be a competitive side to it. It's always, since the beginning of WoW, the competitive side was there, right? Regardless of how complicated or easy it was. And I can tell you for a fact, WoW was an easy game.
Yeah.
Like compared to now, get the fuck out, dude. Like seriously, like sometimes you look at when people were doing heroic dungeons in, I don't know, Burning Crusade or Wrath of the Lich King or whatever, and you compare what was happening in those dungeons to what's happening now in Mythic Plus. Are you fucking kidding me?
It's the exact kind of comparison that we can actually make right now. We talk about this a lot lately. The Blackrock Depths raid. On heroic, that's, if you really think about it, the mechanics are not hard, but we still wipe again and again after each boss.
They're very impactful.
It's a different kind of difficulty that it's more akin to, let's say, traditional game design, where this is a mechanic, you just have to muscle through it, either through reaction time or through proper execution or through gear. It now feels like there's no amount of gear you can muscle through mechanics. It just has to be reaction time, weak auras, and you have that ×3, because there's so many, just you know, although not everybody Mythic raids, our Overnax progress experience has been a clear indication as to how complex can a fight become in regards to how many external resources you need to be able to. Because you can say, okay, you don't need weak auras to deal with parasites or ads, you don't need weak auras to deal with kicks, but when all of them happen at the same time,
that's the thing.
The brain can only multitask so much, and some people can do it without weak auras, but then again, we're designing the game for the very elite people that are, you know, very sweaty, let's say, that can do that.
That's fine.
And that's just
fine.
alienates a lot of the player base.
If you can achieve that goal of designing it for the quote-unquote elites, but without making it to be mandatory to play with weak auras, then you have a win. But I mean,
you know what?
The weak auras we use is the liquid of weak auras. Like, they did it. In order to do
big boys.
that boss, they had to custom weak auras.
There were some 500 IQ brains over there, but I remember a time where, let's say, if the elite gamers in a particular game would end up doing crazy shit, like speed run a whole game in 20 minutes when for us it takes us 50 hours, right?
Clever use of game mechanics.
That would be an example of the elites breaking the game and being very successful at the game. Now it feels like if you acquire elite level skill, you can clear the game. You cannot do any crazy stuff. That's where the tuning of WoW feels to be right now, where if we take a comparison with Dark Souls, where an elite player would be able to solo the entire game naked with no gear, now you would have to get the best gear and you might be able to solo the game. So that's how the Mythic rating feels like it's tuned right now, which maybe that's great, but I feel like that doesn't leave room for awesome stuff to happen. Like how in Warlords of Draenor, there was a Blood Decay that was soloing world bosses while they were live. That was a cool stuff. Or Rex Troy, with how many times he broke the game and caused patches of class balance to
happen. Happened to him? Because
I haven't seen anything, but those kind of things make a game cool, because even if 90% of us were never going to be able to do that kind of stuff, we look at it as like, oh my god, this dude can go as a Destro Warlock in Orgrimmar and fire 30 Chaos Bolts and kill 30 people at once. That is some gnarly stuff, man. But I feel like the safer we go and the more we balance and the way we tune this game, we eliminate those things from ever happening, and it becomes a safe game, very highly tuned, where the elite will never be able to excel and be awesome, but they just might be able to clear the game. And if that's what you need to clear the game, then for us we need 10,000 weak auras. We need 2 extra months, which, you know, we shouldn't be able to clear the raid like the race will first do. That's fine, and we don't have to do it fast. But having to need so many crutches, so many stitches to be able to do it, just takes away some fun aspect of the game, and definitely raises the barrier for everybody else to go in and actually play the video game.